Hi, I'm Taylor Lapidus. Thank you very much for watching our blog. We are the Precision Team, Keller Williams, Arizona Realty. Today we're going to talk quickly about seller concessions. Now there's a lot of misconceptions about seller concessions. Most people have the opinion that seller concession is free money. If they're a buyer and if they're a seller, they look at it as something that they're giving up to the buyers. The truth of the matter is, seller concessions are just a way for a buyer to finance their closing costs rather than paying cash. If a home, let's say, just use round numbers, is worth $100,000, that's what the agreed purchase price is for that property, the buyers are going to have closing costs associated with closing their mortgage, title fees, and whatnot to get the home, separate of that $100,000 to buy the home. So seller concessions would come into play if the buyer said, look, I don't really have enough cash to cover my closing costs. I got enough to cover my down payment, but I don't want to spend this extra cash to cover these extra closing costs. Or maybe I have the cash, but I'm moving. It's going to cost me things for moving companies and furniture and so forth and so on. I'd rather hang on to that cash. So let's do this. Let's finance those closing costs. Let's have the sellers give me back some money out of the proceeds of the sale. So that if they say, let's say they need 3% concessions to cover prorated taxes and closing costs from the mortgage and so forth and so on, that $100,000 with 3% concessions would mean the sellers are donating $3,000 back to the buyers. So the sellers would be getting, before their closing costs, $97,000. $100,000 purchase price, 3% seller concessions, going back to the buyers to cover their closing costs. They're not receiving the cash, it's just different sides of the HUD, the closing settlement statement. The sellers getting $97,000, contributing 3% of the $100,000 back to the buyers. Well, if they're willing to take $97,000 with $100,000 purchase price, donating that 3% back, chances are they would have been willing to take $97,000 just straight up without doing any seller concessions. In which case, the buyers could have made a choice. Perhaps they'd rather get the home for $97,000, have that be what they're financing, and bring their own money to cover their closing costs, bring the cash to close. Whether or not the sellers are donating money to cover the closing costs, the buyers are still paying for it. It's just a question of whether or not they want to finance those closing costs into the loan or whether they want to pay cash for it. And from the seller's point of view, if they're willing to offer 3% concessions, then they should also be willing to take whatever that net is after removing those 3%, just straight up with no concessions. My name is Taylor Lapidus. I'd love to hear your experience and opinion about seller concessions. Have a fantastic day, and thank you very much for watching our blog.